Okay. I also was kind of wondering where everyone or what department everyone's with, and if you're a graduate student or faculty. I was just interested. You can either unmute yourselves or you can throw it in the chat. Oh, good. We have lots of engineering students.
I'm in the psychology department.
Oh, we have a lot of psych students too. Yeah, so we're just trying to expand, to lots of different areas. Okay, this is awesome. I think we got a great group here. College of Nursing, yeah, we're trying to work with them as well to increase our UROP projects in that program too. Okay, so I'll get started. So this is also the program for that's part of the I totally lost my train of thought. I feel very professional right now. But this is the handbook. So this is available on our website as well if you want to look at it on your own afterwards. But David, if you could share the video. I'm not sure if you have it set up to share your sound, but I will let you know.
Let's see.
Prior to taking any UROP students, my concerns were the same as any time you would consider taking novice students.
Whether I would even find a student who's interested in my field.
I didn't know if I'd be working with students who were in my discipline.
The level of management and time that I would have to put in.
Was there going to be enough work? Was it going to be a waste of time for the student?
Can you bring them in on the front end? How do you bring them in on the middle end?
I guess the real trick with something like this is to stage something that's both useful for me, but also for them.
I didn't really have any expectations, but I was very pleasantly surprised.
It puts you in contact with motivated students.
The student assistant whom I work with was an independent thinker and a true researcher.
They were extraordinarily bright, creative thinkers, learned very quickly.
The students that we've had at DOMI in the UROP program surpass my expectations.
They're really enthusiastic and they become really invested very quickly.
I find them to be very highly motivated.
I'm getting a free set of brains and hands, and I'm able to do things that I won't be able to do by my own.
They're some of the smartest students on campus, so it's very energizing for me as a faculty member.
UROP strength there is pre-selecting students that I then get to pick through sort of the cream of the crop.
They were tremendously helpful.
The materials grant was a huge deal for us.
It helped us carry out the work effectively.
That lets you have some outreach activities and prove that you can mentor and guide students.
And it gives me a chance to really bounce some ideas off of someone who's just a clean slate.
It's affecting my teaching probably more than my research and how I incorporate research.
It's really a mutual relationship between the student and the faculty member.
They test the water and I can see whether it's feasible or not.
There are some very talented and highly achieving students at Florida State that deserve opportunities.
Lisa, you're muted.
Yeah. So now I'm going to go over kind of the program in general. So this is designed for first and second year students and new transfer students. So those are the students we're working with. It is a 3-part program. So they participate in a colloquium course, which is taught by upper level students who have a lot of experience in doing research here at FSU in a similar field to the students they're teaching. In the beginning of this course, which lasts the entire academic year, students get access to a database of all of the projects that have been submitted by research mentors, which the portal is open now up until the beginning of fall classes. And then the students start to reach out to research mentors to see if they can find a good match. And then finally, the students present all the research that they've done over the year at the Undergraduate Research Symposium. I don't know if you all were able to come, but this was the first year we've had it back in the union. So it was a huge success. Lots of posters were up, and it was great to see everybody's work that they've put forth this academic year. So it was a really great experience. So if we can go to the next slide. So more in depth about the colloquium, they do get a credit in the fall and spring, and we're actually looking to change the course number for spring to IDS 2921. We'll see if that goes through this summer. And they usually have, I should change that to 1 or 2 UROP leaders, those upper level students who have a lot of research experience. So it's giving the students extra support to navigate being an undergraduate researcher. And the sections for the most part are discipline specific. So we have a nursing section, an engineering section, then we have kind of hard sciences, psychology sections, social science sections. So to make sure that the students and the leaders are in the same field. And then for transfer students, we actually have interdisciplinary sections because it is a smaller population. It's hard to get sections specific that include only the transfer students, because the transfer students have kind of a different trajectory than first and second year students. We want to put all the transfer students in the same section so that they can find that community among transfer students. So on the next slide, we'll be talking about the research assistantship. So we get hundreds of projects, and we really want students and research mentors to understand that we're looking for projects from across campus. And we even work with staff here at FSU or campus partners who might be doing program evaluation, for instance. We also have worked with community organizations as well. So if you have any colleagues who fit those descriptions, please be sure to encourage them to apply. And the students work with you for 5 to 10 hours a week. They often, they're getting that giant list of projects, that database, within the first week or so of the program, and then they start reaching out. So they usually get it like late August, they reach out throughout the month of September, and then by early October, they should have completed the UROP compact with a research mentor. And then the final step of the program is the Undergraduate Research Symposium, and I think that's on the next slide. So I wish we had pictures from this year. I forgot to update those pictures, but this year was the largest symposium that we've ever had in the new union, so it was pretty cool to see. If you're interested, I'll grab the link for the most recent program on our website, and you can look through and see all of the different projects that were part of this symposium. I do want to emphasize that this is for all undergraduate researchers across campus. It's not just for UROP students. So if you're already working with a DIS student or someone maybe honors in the major, or even a student who's volunteering in your lab, you can definitely encourage them to present next year. So I'll throw that link in the chat if you want to look through the presentations from this year and last year. So this is a newer program that we developed last year that's more user-friendly. Prior to this, we had a gigantic Google Doc that was not as user-friendly. So that's most of what I wanted to say about the structure of the program. And then I'm going to turn it over to David to talk about kind of the expectations for you and your student once you find a UROP student.
Yeah, so we're going to be talking about some of the requirements for you as a research mentor and for the UROP student as well. So for a little bit of background, as a UROP student, some of the requirements for the students are that they have to attend a biweekly colloquium class, like Alicia mentioned before. They have to, once they get that link to the portal, they'll reach out to mentors to look through the projects that they're interested in, and then go through an interview process and sign a compact at the end of that interview negotiation process. They're going to be working in the assistantship for 5 to 10 hours per week. We ask that students meet biweekly with the mentor, and that can be in person or over Zoom, whatever works best for the specific project and the dynamic between the student and the research mentor. And also we ask that the student maintains communication with the mentor in case anything arises, if they're having trouble with the project, etc. And then the final requirement is that the student has to present their project in a poster format at the Undergraduate Research Symposium, which is usually typically in April.
David, I did want to add, when we say bi-weekly, I know it can go either way. We mean every other week, which is how often they meet with their colloquium class, but just clarifying that bi-weekly is every other week, not twice a week.
Yeah. For you as a research mentor, there are some, things to think about, and also in terms of requirement too. So for your submission of proposed research, that's going to be where you're submitting the proposal through the portal, which is on our website, and we'll be taking a look at that closer to the end of this presentation. And then there's also the process of selecting the UROP student. So when you put in the portal, you can, in your proposal, say, I'm looking for students who are interested in these types of broad areas of engagement, or if you need a student to have a specific analysis software skill, you can put that in there. If you want them to have some specialized knowledge in literature or history, or some sort of theory like that, you can put that in there as well, basically to tailor what you're looking for in the student. And the important thing that we want to communicate is that if submitting a proposal to the portal does not mean that you have to take a UROP student. This is just so that students can look over your project and reach out to you, but you're under no obligation to take a UROP student if none of the students that reach out to you would work well with your project or anything like that. So we like to say that and make sure that's clear too. Once you've selected a student who you want to work with for the full academic year, the research mentor is expected to outline what the student is supposed to do. Typically this is and obviously this will be contextualized with different projects, but it'll be outlining the timeline, student roles, developing a working schedule, like when the student will work the 5 to 10 hours per week as part of their working on your project. We ask, once, like we just talked about before, every other week, meeting with the research assistant. You're certainly welcome to meet more than that if the project necessitates, but that's just sort of the minimum. Any sort of lab safety training, if you're in a lab, or any sort of critical theory, critical engagement that the student needs to learn about before starting the project, the research mentor is expected to sort of train the student on that too. We do adhere to the FSU safety manual and online safety training for students who are in lab, who will be working in labs too. And they go through a training themselves once the semester starts. So they'll have some basic knowledge there too. Anything else you want to add, Alicia, on this slide?
No, you covered all of it.
So then next, for the actual some other things about being a UROP research mentor, if the eligibility for being a UROP research mentor is that you have to be a faculty member, postdoc, graduate student. You can be a campus partner, and we also do work with certain community organizations too. Those are just like, we would have to have a meeting with that organization and see like what research they're working on and how that best fits with UROP too. But it's pretty broad. So but if you do have any questions about whether or not you are eligible, Alicia can answer those questions for you. And we're happy to have a meeting with you too. If you're unsure of like, I'm working on this project, is this suitable for having undergraduate research help, or how best can I like tailor my projects for undergraduate research help? We're happy to sit down, meet with you, and like talk about your proposal too. There is funding support for research mentors. So faculty can request up to $500 per student for up to 2 students. So that's $1,000 total. Postdocs can request $250 per student for up to 2 students. And graduate students and FSU staff can request a max of $250. This is for funding support for the actual project. And students are also eligible for compensation through working in UROP if they have federal work study. They do receive that 1 credit hour for the class. So they are, and that class can count for some experiences in their specific major department. Some departments also have some internal funding support for students, but that varies like based on department. But basically, there is funding support through our office for both students and research mentors, especially for research mentors if they're looking for materials grant funding, like small equipment and supplies. And finally, as part of UROP, you're also eligible to be nominated for research mentor awards. So we have a UROP faculty mentor award. There's a postdoc award and a graduate student award. The faculty is $2,000. I believe the postdoc is
$500.
Yeah, $500. And the graduate students also. My screen is kind of flickering. I can't really see.
Yeah, it's $500 as well.
That's what I thought. Thank you. Yeah, so this is more about just like the funding support and the recognition for UROP.
Yeah. And I can talk about the mentor requirements. So I think David went over a lot of these already. Training your research assistant on your specific research methods, making sure they have 5 to 10 hours of research work a week. And we do understand, right, the ebb and flow of research, that sometimes you won't have as much to do, and then at other times you need a little bit more. That's perfectly fine. I think the main point is that over the entire this semester, it should average about 5 to 10 hours a week. And I think you also need to be very clear with your students when you start working with them, or even when you're interviewing with them, like when the busy times will be, right? Because, after Thanksgiving, I think a lot of students are very, very busy worrying about their finals and, just preparing to wrap up the semester. Another thing to think about is that, maybe you need a little time to get the project off the ground. So thinking through if the student could be doing a literature review and starting on that work and getting more background knowledge, that maybe they don't have to be quite as supervised compared to physically doing the research methods. And as David mentioned, meeting every other week at least with your UROP research assistant. I would encourage you to meet like once a week at least, so that you and the student are on the same page about where they are in the process and the next steps. And it also helps them to have a hard deadline of when they need to get their next work done by. And then helping them put that poster together for the symposium. We have general formatting guidelines, but other than that, the content should be developed by you and the student. So just having you all there to review, and then you will have to approve the poster before it's printed by the CRE. So we print all of the posters for the symposium for free. It has to be submitted several weeks in advance because we have to print all of the posters, but we do print them for free.
And one thing I wanted to mention about that too is I know that there are some disciplines where posters might not be the default format for presentations. So we also offer, you can meet with me and Alicia or someone in CRE2 to talk about poster requirements, poster format, etc. Because I know for me in English, the default is reading papers. So, when I did UROP, when I was a student, having to create a poster was like, how do I do this? So I just like to say that for, research mentors and students who are in non-STEM fields, essentially.
Yeah, and I will mention that our UROP colloquium, students are given some guidelines about how to start the process of building a poster, but we leave the content up to you and the student. I also want to mention, especially when thinking about STEM, right? We have 4 or 5 prescribed sections of a poster. We have methods and results and conclusions. Because we know that these students are first and second year students, this is their first opportunity for most of them to participate in research. They do not have to have a complete project. So you don't have to have conclusions and results necessarily. They can talk about the literature review that they put together. They can talk about the piece of the research that they conducted. So maybe they just helped with running some of the methods, but the results aren't available yet. So it doesn't have to be a full, complete project that is presented at the symposium. So we're really trying to push that in the class as well, that students can submit a poster that has sections, but they don't have to be those specific sections. Also, we have these evaluations at the end of each semester of UROP because we want to check in with you on how your student is doing. And maybe you've picked a student who seemed like they were going to be a really good fit, and then as you go through the fall semester, they're not communicating or they're not meeting your expectations. At the end of the fall semester, you can submit an evaluation, and you can even terminate your assistantship with the student, or you can alert us that you're having issues with them, and we will start a process called the UROP improvement plan, where students work to come up with steps moving forward so that they start to meet your expectations in the spring. So I really want you to understand that our office is here to support this program and support you and your students so that it's a successful experience for both of you. And that leads me into my next point, is to contact us if you have any issues with your students. So we are here to, again, support you and the student and make sure it's a successful and beneficial relationship. Okay, next slide. So this is designed both for graduate students and faculty, and we just kind of wanted to talk to you about some of the perks of being in this program. So gaining that mentorship experience. And I'll mention here as well, we're working on hosting a couple of mentoring workshops for graduate students specifically over the summer. There's also some workshops that are offered through the Office of Research for faculty as well. And it's the same curriculum, just altered slightly depending on the audience. So it's a really great resource that can support research mentors and thinking through research-based mentoring practices that are beneficial for undergraduates specifically. Some of the other pieces that are helpful is students are, they have a lot to contribute to, and they can come up with some interesting ideas that maybe you hadn't thought of before, or at least a kernel of an idea that you can run with and incorporate into your research. Those first and second year students, they could stay on your project beyond UROP. UROP is just a starting point. They can continue working with you after that. And by that point, they've already been trained up because of their participation in your research. And then the funding is the other piece. The materials grant, which I will specify, is just for materials that are related to your project that the UROP students are working on. I will mention those applications start in late fall, and then they're distributed usually in like February or March. So it's more of a planning type of tool for kind of some future projects. It's not something that you would get at the beginning of the fall semester. And then you can be nominated for the Undergraduate Research Mentor Award as well. And then I think the next slide talks about the benefits or some of the other benefits of working with a UROP student. So sometimes we just want students, graduate students, to get through school as quickly as possible, and that mentoring just takes away from what they're focusing on. However, there are a lot of benefits to working with students. They can help you move your research along a little faster. They have to present at the symposium, but there are other poster presentation opportunities, and they can present on your behalf about your research as well. You can look over it. You can have them proofread and do reference checks and even be co-authors. That's one of the biggest benefits to them, is being a co-author on a paper. And we don't necessarily expect that from UROP, but if they continue working with you after UROP, that is definitely an opportunity that might be available. And then, facilitating connections and thinking about the future of your field and where they are going to go and how they will take your mentorship and move forward. So then thinking about it as a faculty, right? Again, some of the same things, getting that extra support, working with students for multiple years. You can add it to your promotion and tenure portfolio. You get up to $1,000 of research mentor materials grant funding. And then again, you can get up to $2,000 for the Undergraduate Research Mentor Award. So one thing that I'm really interested, and I will answer the questions after we're done with the presentation, but one thing I'm really interested in is the mentoring aspect of this program. So I think it's a really important piece of this whole program. Where students go and what they do afterwards is significantly influenced by how the research mentorship relationship goes. So it can really be beneficial for students from underrepresented identities. It's been shown in several studies, at least, that it helps students to persist in their degree, and often a lot of students end up going to grad school after participating in undergraduate research. I think it's really amazing to see the students when, and their growth throughout the program. When they start, they're very nervous and a little intimidated by reaching out to faculty and other research mentors. But by the time they get to the poster presentation, they have more ownership of the research that they've done. And it's amazing just to see their pride in the work that they've done throughout the year with you all. And it can really help students better understand what it is to be a researcher and scholar, and help them decide where they want to go. One interesting piece about UROP is that students don't have to do research in the field that they're majoring in. So it's cool to see students who, are on a project that maybe they're not majoring in, but they find it very exciting and interesting, and that can even shift their career goals in that way. Or sometimes they get into a research project in their field and it's not what they expected, so they kind of think through, is this really what I want to do? And I mean, being able to do that in their first or second year, or when they just transfer over, is a huge advantage to them moving forward. So it's just a really, really cool opportunity to see these students grow. And one important piece of that mentorship is creating that strong connection. So I want to ask you all, how, thinking back to the mentors that you had as an undergraduate, or even the mentors you have now, how would you say that's accomplished? You should be able to unmute yourselves. Yeah, Dave.
Yeah, I guess for me, a big factor in the mentorship department there was a professor that just had seemingly unlimited passion for what they were doing. They were just really excited, and it kind of opened my eyes that I was like, oh, this can be like somebody's life, and they're just like really enjoying what they're doing, and that kind of thing was just contagious. And it's like, and it also shows that they're real people as well, because like as an undergrad, I was just like, oh wow, research, wow, that must be like so hard to do,
Mm-hmm.
But it's, yeah, just kind of puts it in a different perspective when they get a chance to actually be a part of it.
Right. Yeah. And I think it sounds like that person, your mentor, kind of connected with you on a personal level, right? So that you mentioned that, it was more approachable once you understood, kind of like, oh, this person isn't up on a pedestal. They're like me, and I can do this too.
Yeah, exactly. Just, they weren't afraid to like try things and make mistakes, and then also talk about it and just be like, oh, that was really cool, but it didn't work. And,
Yeah, that's great. Thank you for sharing. Is anyone else willing to share about maybe their experiences connecting with their mentor, or their ideas about making connections with their students?
I guess I'll just add that working together to solve problems together helps a lot, because it just kind of brings you closer and you can accomplish things together, right? That I think is important.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think one thing that impacts students and kind of their identity as a researcher, or seeing themselves as a researcher, is that recognition. So listening to their ideas and like recognizing that they have valuable ideas, and that it's important to the research that you're doing. So that can be one way to make that connection as well. Just encouraging students and letting them know that their ideas are valued in your research. So thank you so much for sharing. And I think, this is also part of that training that I mentioned for graduate students. And I'm working this summer to update our research mentor resources, so that we have more resources for you to look over and use as a UROP research mentor. I realize I've been talking for most of this time, so I'm going to pass it back over to David for the next slide.
Yeah. So, and this kind of goes with what we were just talking about in terms of thinking about why would I want to be a UROP research mentor, and considering how, maybe your mentor in your undergraduate career, how did they influence your career path, your personal growth? And, maybe if there's also this idea of, if you didn't have a mentor in your undergrad career, maybe this is a chance to sort of build on that mentorship cycle.
I'm having trouble hearing you through the mic, David.
Oh, really?
Is anyone else having that issue?
I was hearing okay.
Okay. It says my internet is connected and is unstable. Sorry.
That's okay. And then thinking about, like, what would you want to replicate in your mentorship cycle and experience, and what do you want to do differently, and how would you want to start that that mentorship for students who are going to work on your project too. So that's just something to think about when you're considering becoming a UROP research mentor. And one thing that we really want to emphasize in being particularly because you're going to be working with first and second year undergraduate students, is emphasizing that communication is like the most important and most valuable thing between the student and research mentor relationship, in considering open and honest communication, saying, explicitly identifying like what the student's going to be doing, encouraging a space for the student to say, I don't really understand. Could you explain a little bit more? Meeting the student where they are in their current academic pathway and career too, and just like cultivating a space for them to have that communication back and forth between you and the research mentor. So communication is like the most important part of UROP, because it's foundational for the student to have a great research experience, and it's foundational for you as the research mentor to be able to have them contribute to your research and also give back to the student too. So we like to really emphasize the communication angle. So as a mentor, when you've decided that you want to be a research mentor and submit a proposal to the project portal, we have some guidelines here about best practices and what the portal should look like in terms of the actual like project description. So we like to say to minimize any sort of jargon, to use like clear and specific language. That's not to say, obviously, if there's like if your paper or your project is built around a specific term, obviously include that, but maybe it's some signaling language to talk about why that's the most important part of your project and what you'll be like discovering in the project. We like to think about the project proposal as a way to connect outwards to outside of the university. So thinking like, what is this research actually, like what conversations is this research contributing to both in academia, and what are the effects of the research outside of academia too? So what are some of like the broader big picture sort of contributions of the project? And we like to say to be inclusive of all majors. We're really big on interdisciplinary research and seeing academia as a collaborative space instead of one that's very competitive. So we're really encouraging research mentors to craft proposals where a lot of different majors could maybe work on a similar project. As far as the proposal for research tasks, it's a good idea to put in the clear expectations for what you want your student to do, whether it's what type of work they'll be doing. theory or background or what have you that they need, things like that. So let's see. Let's go to the project portal. Let's take a look at that.
And I put the link for the project portal in the chat as well.
So this is just what the portal looks like. Obviously, you're here at the info sessions, but you'll put in your name. If you have any other potential research assistants working with you, pretty basic stuff like email, college. You can put a headshot if you want to. We've heard from students that this is helpful because it sort of like breaks the barrier of like you get to see who you'll be working with. And we found students have told us in the past that they found like the headshot to be like really approachable. So it's optional, you don't have to, but we've heard students say that they like the headshot. You can put additional research mentors here too. Title of the project. The reason we ask for these project keywords is that when students get the portal, they will be able to like search for specific types of projects. So if you put a project key, you can put like, I'm working in literature, or I'm working in biology, or what have you, and you can put that as one of the keywords and students will be able to search for that and find your project. We ask if you're currently looking for research assistants. If you're first submitting the project, click yes. The reason for that is once you found your research assistant, you can go back onto your portal link and say no so that people know you've already selected the students that you'll work with. You can put the number of research assistants needed. For faculty postdoc, it's a max of 6 students. Graduate students, it's a max of 2. And then if you're a community partner, we'll work with you on the project to determine how many research assistants. Here's where we're talking about the majors. If there's no preference, you can put open to all majors. And then but you can also put in like if there's discipline specific majors, etc. You can put here if it's going to be on main campus or off main campus. If you want to do a remote project, you can click like off main campus and select like no, the project is remote. You can also click here whether or not it's going to be in person or remote. Then thinking about how many hours a week would the research assistant need to work. Time frames. So, we try to think about, students' schedules, like what classes they're going to be working, but also what works best for you. Here's the research project description. This is where you get to talk about like what we were just talking about before, like what your project looks like, what you want the student to contribute, the specific tasks, any specific skills. And then one of the most exciting portions is that we ask you to include a mentoring philosophy. And the reason for this is we're hoping that students will look over this as a way to like find research mentors that best fit with their learning styles, with their mentoring, mentee styles, things like that. So if let's say if a student is a more like hands-off learner and you're a more hands-off mentor, we're hoping that the mentoring philosophy can like encourage and like match that student research mentor faster. But it's also a chance to identify like what your approach to mentoring looks like, what you want your mentee to understand in working with you and in this space, and it's also a chance to connect like your own personal philosophies with your research project, which is incredibly important. So this is a chance for you to really write and connect with the students. You can also put, and we also have examples here if you want to look at how to create one too. Forgot to mention that. You can also put in links or publications to previous projects, or if your project is currently ongoing, you can include a link here. And we also give space for you to put in any additional information too. As far as the roundtables, so the roundtable event, you don't have to participate, but we have found that it's a really great way for you as the research mentor to connect with students over Zoom. And if you do want to participate in that, you can just let us know and we'll follow up with more information. But this is a really great way to connect with UROP students. And then there's some agreements and you'll click submit. So this is just, it's a really replete application, but it's, important for our students to know like what exactly they're going to get in their project, out of your project. So let's go back. So how to get involved as a mentor, just some best practices about interviewing potential students. These are first and second year students, so they might feel intimidated about reaching out to faculty, postdoc grad students. So we like to say to be approachable, and in the interview, like gauge interest or what the level of involvement will be. The interview is also a good space to assess the skill level of the UROP student. You can also establish those clear expectations like we were talking about, etc. The interview is just a really great place to like connect with the student and see like how they fit with your project. Some other things to consider in being a research mentor: you'll want to assess your workload and time commitment. Obviously in academia, we're very, very busy. So between like teaching courses, writing, researching, do you have the time to mentor and contribute to this mentorship cycle? And just sort of like assessing where it fits in with your current academic pathway, thinking about those clear expectations again, and also the clear communication, the regular in-person meetings, responding to emails, and just like connecting with the student to make sure they have a great experience in UROP. And of course, we're here to help. At CRE, we're committed to helping you have a great experience in UROP and get the help if you need, and also help their students as well. So we're here to help mediate any sort of problems that might be happening between you and your student. And I think the big takeaway in being a UROP research mentor is to empathize with our UROP students, and remembering what it was like when you were in undergrad and all the things that you're learning and going through. It's such a transformational time. So just understanding that yes, they are doing research, but they're also just empathizing with them and their experience too. And finally, I'll close by talking about the UROP timeline. So May 1st, it's actually May 8th now, is the deadline for students right now to apply to be in UROP. They'll find out if they're in UROP in July or so. August 21st is the deadline for mentors to submit their project proposals. The students then start in their first week of classes. They'll have their colloquium classes. And then after that first week of classes and the UROP Research Mentor Roundtable is when they'll get the project portal. And that's usually starting in early September when student and mentors start to interview, and they'll talk with each other about the projects. October 7th is the deadline for the compacts to be signed. And then the students will work with you from October through April. Like Alicia mentioned before, the end of fall is when the mentors submit their feedback survey and also to apply for materials funding. Spring then sort of pivots to the poster presentations, making sure you're looking over the poster and that it's accurate. And then at the very end of spring and April is when students present at the URS, the symposium. And you'll also submit a second feedback survey on your student.